Chapter 1. The HOA Nightmare Begins. James Carter was living the dream. After years of hard work, he had finally purchased his perfect estate, a sprawling 40-acre property just outside of Green Haven, an upscale neighborhood notorious for its homeowners association, HOA. But the best part? His land wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. That simple fact drove Linda Dawson, the tyrannical president of the Green Haven HOA, absolutely insane. For months, James had been constructing his private golf course, his personal sanctuary, a place where he and his friends could enjoy the sport without dealing with the usual club politics or memberships. But Linda? She saw it as a threat to her control. It started small. Passive-aggressive letters, suspicious inspections, and even HOA violation notices even though James wasn't under their authority. He ignored them, confident that they had no real power over him. Then Linda escalated. One morning, as James was perfecting his tee shot on hole 3, the sound of blaring sirens shattered the peaceful morning air. Within minutes, 3 police cars stormed onto his private property, officers exiting their vehicles with hands hovering over their weapons. James let out an exasperated sigh, setting down his club. What now? A no-nonsense officer with a buzz cut stepped forward. Sir, we received a report of an illegal business operation being conducted on this property. Are you the owner? James blinked. Illegal business? This is my private estate. Before the officer could respond, she arrived, Linda Dawson, flanked by a few of her HOA cronies, arms crossed and a smug smile plastered across her face. Don't believe him, she shrieked. I've seen dozens of people coming and going. He's clearly running an unauthorized business. This is a safety hazard. James rolled his eyes. Linda, for the last time, I'm not in your HOA. You have no authority over my property. The officer sighed, rubbing his temple. Ma'am, do you have any actual proof of illegal activity? Linda hesitated for a moment before huffing. I heard voices. I saw cars. That's proof enough. The officers exchanged skeptical looks before turning back to James. Sir, do you mind if we take a look around? James shrugged. Be my guest. For the next 15 minutes, the police officers inspected the entire estate. No signs of business transactions, no advertising, no signs of illegal activity, just a man enjoying his own land. When they returned, the lead officer sighed. Everything checks out. This isn't a business, just a private golf course. Linda's face turned beet red. No, that can't be right. He's lying. The officer turned to her, arms crossed. Ma'am, filing a false emergency report is a serious offense. If you continue harassing Mr. Carter, you could be facing legal consequences. Linda's confidence cracked for the first time. But I was just protecting the community. The officer didn't budge. This is private property. If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you off. James expected another outburst, but for once, Linda backed down. With a final death glare, she spun on her heel and stormed off. Greg, James' next-door neighbor, who had been watching from his porch, let out a whistle. Man, she is certifiable. James chuckled. Yeah, but something tells me this isn't over. And he was right. Chapter 2. The HOA's Dirty Tricks. The next morning, James woke up to an official-looking letter in his mailbox. Subject, Urgent, Violation Notice. Dear Mr. Carter, it has come to our attention that your property is currently in violation of multiple HOA regulations, including unauthorized modifications to exterior structures, failure to maintain landscaping aesthetics, noise complaints from neighbors. Failure to rectify these violations within 7 days will result in fines and potential legal action. Sincerely, Linda Dawson, HOA President. James let out a bitter laugh. Of course. Just as he was reading the letter, Greg walked by again. You look like you're ready to punch a wall. James held up the letter. Linda just hit me with a bunch of bogus HOA violations. I didn't even know this neighborhood had an HOA. Greg chuckled. That's because it basically didn't exist until Linda wanted power. She revived it last year, and most of us just ignore her. James exhaled sharply. So what do I do? Pay the fines. Greg smirked. Nah, man. Fight back. Chapter 3. The retaliation begins. James wasn't going to roll over. He spent the next few days documenting everything. Photos of his property, recordings of how silent his golf course was, and even a signed statement from other neighbors confirming Linda's abuse of power. Then he decided to hit where it hurt. He filed a formal complaint with the county for HOA harassment and abuse of authority. And, for good measure, he dug into Linda's own property records. What he found was gold. Linda's backyard fence extended beyond her property line. She had an unpermitted patio structure, multiple unpaid HOA fees, her own rules ignored. James smirked. Time to play dirty. He drafted his own HOA violation notice, this time addressed to Linda Dawson. Chapter 4. The Counterattack. James knew that filing complaints wouldn't be enough. Linda had spent years establishing herself as the queen of the HOA, and she wasn't going down without a fight. If he wanted to win, he had to make sure she had nowhere to hide. He didn't just stop at the county complaint. He went further. First, he contacted a local investigative journalist. Greenhaven's HOA had a history of pushing homeowners around, and if there was one thing reporters loved, it was exposing corruption. Within days, the journalist had agreed to run a piece on HOA tyrants abusing power in Greenhaven. Then, he reached out to other homeowners. As it turned out, he wasn't alone. Several residents had their own stories of Linda's harassment, ridiculous fines, and shady financial dealings. James gathered their testimonies and forwarded them to the county housing board. Linda wasn't just facing one complaint anymore. She was now under official investigation. And the best part? She didn't know it yet. Chapter 5. The HOA's desperate move. Linda wasn't one to sit back and let things unfold. When she sensed something was wrong, she did what she always did. She doubled down. A few days later, James woke up to a new violation notice taped to his front door. This time, it wasn't just about landscaping or noise complaints. No, this was bigger. Subject: cease and desist order. Dear Mr. Carter, it has come to our attention that you have been actively inciting discord within the Greenhaven community and engaging in behavior that is damaging to the reputation of the HOA. Effective immediately, you are ordered to cease all actions related to the slander of Greenhaven HOA leadership. Failure to comply will result in legal consequences. Sincerely, Linda Dawson, HOA President. James burst out laughing. She was threatening legal action now? This was pure desperation. He didn't even bother to take the notice inside. He just snapped a photo and sent it directly to his lawyer. Greg came jogging over. Saw the new love letter from Linda? James nodded, shaking his head. She's losing it. Greg smirked. Oh, you haven't heard? HOA board members are turning against her. The county is investigating, and the news crew is sniffing around. She's panicking. James grinned. Good. Let's turn up the heat. Chapter 6. The investigation goes public. Within a week, Greenhaven was in chaos. The investigative journalist released a bombshell article exposing the HOA's history of fraud, mismanagement, and intimidation tactics. Residents who had been silent for years finally spoke up, sharing their own horror stories. At the same time, the county housing board launched an official audit. HOA funds were being examined, and irregularities were piling up fast. And then came the final blow. Linda Dawson was served with a formal subpoena. The county had found enough evidence to move forward with a legal case for financial misconduct. She had gone from HOA dictator to a woman fighting for her own survival. And James? He finally had his victory in sight. Chapter 7. The HOA collapses. The aftermath of the investigation was devastating for Linda. The audit revealed thousands of dollars in misused funds, including personal expenses disguised as community improvements. Worse, her selective enforcement of HOA rules had left dozens of homeowners furious. The HOA board, desperate to save themselves, called for an emergency vote to remove Linda as president. The meeting was chaos. Linda has been robbing us blind, one homeowner shouted. She fined me for my mailbox while she built an illegal patio, another fumed. James stood at the back, arms crossed, watching as Linda's empire crumbled. When the vote was cast, it was unanimous. Linda Dawson was officially removed as HOA president. As she stormed out of the room, she pointed a shaking finger at James. You did this to me. James smirked. No, you did this to yourself. Chapter 8. Justice served. With Linda gone, the HOA was forced to refund thousands of dollars in unfairly issued fines. Homeowners celebrated as a new, fair board was put in place. As for Linda, She faced criminal charges for financial fraud and was under serious legal scrutiny. One afternoon, James sat on his golf course, enjoying the quiet victory, when Greg strolled over. "So," Greg said, cracking open a beer. "Now that you won, what's next?" James smiled, watching the sunset. "I finally get to enjoy my damn golf course, without HOA lunatics breathing down my neck." Greg raised his beer. "To a Linda-free neighborhood." James clinked bottles. "Cheers." For the first time since moving to Green Haven, peace had finally returned.